I'm Mary Allison Brown. I'm a mental health therapist and a coach, and I'm on a mission to redefine self-care. Hello and welcome back to Self-Care Redefined, the podcast. I am so excited to share with you today the 5 pillars of foundational self-care. This is the framework that you need if you use nothing else to really start nurturing and supporting your own mental and emotional health every single day. Now, one of the things before I get into the framework that I think is important to talk about is that the American Psychological Association has called chronic stress a public health crisis. In the United States, 90% of all disease and illness can be directly attributed to stress, and we spend $300 billion with a B, $300 billion every single year treating those problems that are caused by stress. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that seems like a little bit of a problem, right? It seems like there are things that we need to be doing and can be doing on a daily basis for ourselves that can really start to shift the way that stress impacts us on an individual level. Now, this episode is not about the stress response. If you want more information on that, definitely hop inside the membership where we're having all of those conversations, or just stay tuned. There will definitely be a future episode where we dive really into the actual stress response that our body has. Now, for today, I'm going to introduce you to the 5 pillars of foundational self-care. The 5 pillars of foundational self-care is a framework that I created based on the things that we know have a direct impact on mood, energy, and mental health. So I'm going to share those 5 pillars with you now. The first pillar of foundational self-care is nutrition. The food that you eat directly impacts how you feel and your mood. The serotonin is a hormone that has to do with feelings of happiness, and 95% of our serotonin is produced in our gut. So nutrition has a massive impact on how you feel. So when I talk about nutrition as being one of the pillars of foundational self-care, I'm not a nutritionist. I am not expecting or anticipating that your diet will be 100% perfect. Not at all. What I am looking for, though, is that you're mindful of your choices, that you're eating foods that support your well-being. You're eating foods that energize you, that make you feel good, that, using that 80% rule, like 80% of your diet is foods that make you feel great and that support long-term physical and mental health. When it comes to nutrition, the things that we put inside our body are the fuel for all of our activities. And so you can just think about what you're putting in and what you're getting out in terms of energy, in terms of irritability, in terms of potentially symptoms of depression. And so really just thinking about how is your nutrition. Now, after I share all 5 pillars with you, I will share a little way that you can kind of start thinking about these things and start making some tweaks in your life to improve them. I also want to tell you that in this series, we are going to be going through each of the 5 pillars in great depth. This episode is really intended to be an overview, and then after this, you'll hear me talk about each of the pillars individually, and we'll be bringing on some incredible guests that can really help create that link for you as to why these things are so important when it comes to mental health. So following nutrition, we have the pillar of sleep. Sleep is something that we don't often give a ton of thought to. And we used to think that challenges with sleep was a symptom of a mental health disorder. Now we know that sometimes that is the case. However, new research is really pointing to the role that sleep plays in creating and exacerbating existing mental health conditions. So sleep is such a big thing. When we talk about sleep, people who are not sleeping enough, people who have insomnia, are 10 times as likely to have clinical depression and 17 times as likely to be diagnosed with a clinical anxiety disorder. Sleep and the quality of your sleep really matters when it comes to mood, irritability, mental health. And so in this category, I want you to start thinking about, are you getting enough sleep, first of all? And second of all, what do your sleep hygiene habits look like? For example, we know that looking at a phone or a screen before bed can really interfere with the quality of your sleep. So what does your bedtime routine look like? How are you creating associations for your brain around it's time to rest and do all of those important functions that happen when you sleep? So sleep is our second pillar of the 5 pillars of foundational self-care. And third, we have movement. Now when it comes to movement, exercise, across the board, when different things have been studied for their impact on mood, exercise is the one thing that consistently, across the board, improves mood. Exercise has a huge impact on mood. However, when we're talking about the 5 pillars of foundational self-care, I really want this framework to feel accessible to everybody. Sometimes when we talk about exercise, people feel that exercise is not an option for them, or they're not able to do exercise in the way that they think they should or the way that they want it to look like. So for this pillar, I really want you to think about movement. When we are having an excess of stressors in our life, which we all are, then what happens is that we just tend to live in our head, and I want you to reconnect with your body. Your body has a lot of information for you, but if you're disconnected from it, if you're not listening, you can't access that information, you can't hear it. So when it comes to movement, how do you like to move your body? If you are someone who likes to run or hike or bike or play team sports, by all means, great. Those are great things that fit into this category. But if you don't want to or are unable to do any of those things, 5 minutes of stretching in your living room could also work for this category. The goal is to connect with your body. Now, 30 minutes of exercise 3 times a week has been shown in some studies to be as effective as medication for reducing symptoms of depression in some people. Now, that is not going to be true for everyone necessarily, but it is something to think about when you're really thinking about how to consistently cultivate the movement category in your own life. Exercise makes a huge difference. Whatever that looks like for you, please do not believe that you have to fit yourself into a box or someone else's exercise routine. You need to do the things that feel good to you and your body. Now, our next pillar is mindfulness. In this pillar, we're not talking about necessarily a traditional mindfulness practice, although that certainly could be what you choose. When we're talking about mindfulness here, I'm directly referring to the activation of our parasympathetic nervous system. So when we have a stress response, when our stress response system is activated, that's the activation of our sympathetic nervous system. That is the part of our nervous system that causes the fight, flight, or freeze response. And when we have that response, we have a surge of adrenaline and cortisol, we have an increased heart rate, we have all of the physiological symptoms that happen in our body as our body prepares to face a physical threat. However, what happens for all of us all the time is that our stress response becomes activated in response to something that is not a physical threat. Your bank account is overdrawn, you are late on a bill, your kids are fighting. None of those things are a tiger that's trying to eat you. You cannot run away from those things. You cannot fight them. All of those stress hormones just start to accumulate in the body if you're not completing the stress cycle. Mindfulness is a way to activate the body's opposite response, the body's calming response. So we know that our stress response is called fight, flight, or freeze. Our calming response is called rest and digest. These are physically incompatible responses that cannot happen at the same time. Therefore, since we know that our stress response is constantly activated, we want to intentionally activate our calming response as well. So mindfulness here means anything that activates our parasympathetic nervous system. Can be as simple as deep belly breathing. So when you think about deep belly breathing, deep diaphragmatic breathing, you can put a hand on your heart, a hand on your belly, breathe into your belly, and back out. There are many different breathing techniques that could work. Square breathing is a favorite of mine, where you imagine that you're drawing a square with your breath, and you go in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Another one that is really effective in calming the body's response is called paced breathing. Now, paced breathing, your exhale is longer than your inhale. And so in paced breathing, you might be breathing in for 5, out for 7. So we can kind of try that together. So we're going to breathe in for 5 and out for 7. Now, really easy, right? I already feel more calm. The mindfulness pillar does not need to take you a long time, and none of the pillars do. The mindfulness pillar, you could really intentionally work on 2 minutes of deep breathing a day, and that would be a great start. That would be a great, great start. Mindfulness does not have to be about deep breathing. It could be a formal mindfulness practice. It could be meditation. It could be EFT tapping. If that's something that you're interested in, inside of the membership, we're doing monthly EFT parties where I am teaching you how to get the most out of the tapping intervention for your unique issues in your life. So that's the mindfulness pillar. And then the final pillar of foundational self-care is reflection. The goal of the reflection pillar is to really think about how are you living your life with purpose on purpose. So the reflection pillar, my favorite thing to do inside this pillar is journaling. I believe that journaling is hands down the most powerful tool that you have available to you in your personal development arsenal. However, I work with many people who do not want to journal or unwilling to journal, and if that's you, that's okay too. We're not trying to force you to do something that doesn't feel right or that you have too much resistance around. Other things can fit into this reflection category as well, like visualization, planning your day, writing down gratitude. Lots of good research around how an intentional gratitude practice really does change the brain. We'll talk about that in a future episode. But whatever this is, in the reflection category for you, I really want you to be thinking about how are you living your life on purpose? How are you reflecting on things? How are you being proactive and intentional as opposed to just reactive and responsive to what life is throwing your way? So those are the 5 pillars of foundational self-care. I'm going to recap those for you one time. They are nutrition, sleep, movement, mindfulness, and reflection. And how I want you to think about this, if you're not already inside the free Sustainable Self-Care Challenge, this piece of the challenge happens on day 3, and I would highly recommend that you check that out so that you can have the actionable worksheets that go along with this. However, I want you to just look at the 5 pillars, rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you doing in each pillar? Now, I want you to identify something you could do in each pillar that would help move that number up just 1. I don't want you to try to start by making everything perfect in every pillar, because that is not a sustainable path forward. What we want to do is create small wins and momentum in the right direction. So I really like to encourage my clients to start with just 5 minutes a day, combining in whatever way works best for you, the mindfulness pillar and the reflection pillar. As far as the nutrition component, of course, make mindful choices, really aim for that 80-20 split. When it comes to movement, make sure you're moving your body every day, whether that's 5 minutes of stretching in the living room or an hour-long run or just a walk down the block. Whatever it is for you is A-okay. And then for the sleep pillar, just thinking about, are you getting enough sleep? If you're not, why, and what can you do about that? And how can you improve your own sleep hygiene patterns just a little bit? I really hope that this information has helped you to think about the things that you're doing every single day that are supportive of mental health, because every choice you make, every decision that you make will move you a little bit closer to where you want to be or a little bit further away. And so the more choices you can make that move you in the right direction, the closer you'll get to your goal and the more quickly you'll get there. And so I really want to see you thinking about how this applies to your own life. If you're not, like I said, hop inside the free Sustainable Self-Care Challenge at selfcareredefined.com and then join us inside the membership, because inside the membership, we're having deeper conversations around how to apply all of these things to your life and how to get through whatever resistance or barriers you might be facing. Thank you so much for being here today, and I will see you next time inside of Self-Care Redefined, the podcast.